Okay, so you sent in some seriously interesting stuff for us to look at this time, all about online advertising, and specifically about how to go beyond just getting those first sales, those conversions,
Right.
and actually get to a place where things really start to scale, grow in a big way.
Exactly.
And one of the things that really jumped out at me from these resources is that, some campaigns, it feels like you're always on this treadmill just trying to find that next winning,
Oh, creative. Yeah.
next ad that's really going to work. While other campaigns, they seem to, they kind of take on a life of their own.
Yeah.
And they build momentum and, they keep going.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect introduction to what the source material calls ad churn.
Okay.
It paints this really vivid picture, right?
Yeah.
Like this feeling of constantly needing to come up with new ads just to keep your results from completely tanking.
Right.
Because the old ones they stop working, they fizzle out.
Yeah, they burn out.
Exactly. And ultimately, what we're all striving for here, as the source material points out, is to escape that cycle.
Right.
And reach what they call a low ad churn reality.
Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. Why does this ad churn happen in the first place? The material you shared outlines five main culprits, I guess you could say. First, audience fatigue.
Of course, yeah.
We've all seen that. We've all experienced that,
Solely.
Seeing the same ad over and over and over again until you want to scream.
Yeah, you tune it out. You're numb to it.
You're completely numb to it. And then there's creative burnout, even on our side as advertisers or copywriters, whatever we are.
Sure.
You get tired of your own stuff after a while, right?
Yeah, you get sick of seeing it, get sick of hearing it.
And then it just doesn't have the same impact anymore.
Exactly.
And then, this is something we don't always think about, but the platforms themselves can contribute to this through ad platform saturation.
It's a real thing.
So, too many ads.
So many ads.
Just, fighting for attention.
And it makes it harder for yours to stand out.
Exactly.
And potentially could even drive up your costs.
Right. And then, another one is increased competition.
Makes sense, yeah.
If more people are advertising in your niche,
more competition.
Obviously, ad costs are going to go up.
Drives up the price.
And then finally, the algorithms.
The algorithms.
The ever-changing algorithms of these platforms can just throw a wrench into everything at any moment.
Always keeping us on our toes.
Always keeping us on our toes, yeah.
Right, and all those factors just contribute to that pressure, to always be coming up with new creatives.
Right.
And what I find so interesting is that so many advertisers, and understandably so, they focus on that initial win.
Right.
Getting that positive ROI on a single ad.
You get that sale, you're like, yes.
You're feeling good.
This is working.
But, the material you shared makes this really, really crucial distinction here.
Okay. They highlight that while those initial conversions are obviously important,
Of course.
campaigns that only focus on that,
Right.
they often kind of hit a ceiling. It might be bringing in some sales,
Sure.
but it feels kind of unpredictable, and there's no clear path to really scale things up.
Totally.
It's like every success is just a lucky break,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to replicate it.
Precisely. Scaling, as the material frames it, it's bigger than that.
Okay.
It's about feeding the platform's algorithm enough data consistently over time
Okay.
so that the AI can really learn who your audience is
Right.
and how to reach them best
Yeah.
for long-term sustained performance.
Right.
And to get there requires a real shift in mindset.
Okay.
We got to move beyond just chasing those immediate sales.
Right, those quick hits.
Yeah, like one-and-done kind of conversion ads.
Right, and I thought this was really interesting what the material had to say about this, because it frames this focus on conversion only as almost, kind of selfish, a me mindset.
It's all about what we want from the audience right now.
Right, instead of thinking about what the platforms need to really make our campaigns work in the long run.
It's like we're not considering the bigger picture.
Right, and the material highlights two major downsides to this approach. First, you're basically ignoring how these algorithms work.
You're not working with them, you're working against them almost.
Exactly. And second, by just focusing on that transaction, you risk presenting a soulless value proposition.
Right.
Something that doesn't connect with people on a deeper level.
It's just a quick grab for cash.
And, the source material puts this pretty bluntly. It says, chasing money is for cowards.
Wow, that's pretty strong.
It's a strong statement, but it gets you thinking, right?
It does.
And they contrast that with offer owners who actually care about helping people.
Right, there's a heart behind it. And I think that leads perfectly into this key principle they introduce.
Okay.
It's a good one. It says, this isn't about me. Yeah. It's about training the algorithm to see that I know and understand the story and the conversation that people are already having in their minds.
Wow. Okay, so how does this shift in mindset actually translate into better results for our advertising?
Right. Good question. The sources outline 3 key benefits. First, it keeps potential customers on the platform longer,
Okay.
engaging with your content. Second, it generates comments on your ads.
Which seems counterintuitive, right?
It might, but those comments actually help expand what they call the pixel's relevance,
Okay, interesting. And third, it results in higher intention clicks.
meaning more actual sales that the algorithm can track.
So it's feeding the algorithm good data.
Exactly. And ultimately, that helps to refine and expand the audience that you can reach.
So it's like you're almost building this virtuous cycle
Those,
where your ads are not just trying to make a quick buck, but they're actually providing valuable data that the algorithm can use
Right.
to find more of your ideal customers.
Think of it this way. The algorithm is always watching, analyzing what people are doing.
Right.
When people linger on your ad or leave thoughtful comments,
Okay.
it's a strong signal that this content is valuable. It resonates with the audience.
Right.
And those positive signals are what the source calls constants. That can really drive what they call exponential scale.
Which brings us to the distinction between just scaling your ads and achieving this exponential scale.
It's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
Exponential scale isn't just about pumping more money into your ads.
Okay.
It's when you have multiple front-end ads and even entire marketing funnels all scaling at the same time.
Now that is the dream, right?
That's the holy grail.
That's what we're all after.
And the sources contrast a campaign that's just, kind of converting.
Right.
You're getting those initial sales, but it feels fragile. And it tends to, kind of collapse when you try to increase the budget.
Right.
Versus a campaign that's truly scaling. And the big difference here is that in a campaign that's stuck at the conversion stage, every winning ad feels like a fluke.
Okay.
You don't really understand why it worked, which makes it almost impossible to predict future performance.
Right.
Or to really plan for growth.
And that's when you see that ad fatigue set in.
Oh, yeah?
You're just relying on that one creative, and eventually it stops working.
And it's almost inevitable that it's going to decline.
Right.
So it's important to remember that scaling isn't just about pouring more money in. It's about designing your campaigns in a way that the platform's AI, whether it's Meta or Google or whatever, has the chance to learn and optimize over time.
Based on how people are interacting with it.
Exactly.
And a huge part of that is audience expansion.
Absolutely.
The source material explains that conversion-only ads, they tend to tap into a pretty narrow segment of the market, people who are already searching for what you offer.
That makes sense.
So you see some initial success, but then, performance plateaus or drops off.
You try to scale up the ad spend.
Exactly, when you try to reach more people. Whereas campaigns that are designed to scale, they're built to feed the algorithm these engagement signals.
Right, all those likes, shares, comments.
The clicks, even the time spent viewing.
All of it.
This is all data. That tells the platform who's interested.
Even if they're not ready to buy right now.
Exactly.
And that allows the algorithm to broaden your audience reach.
Beyond that initial, group of buyers.
Without your costs going through the roof.
Without breaking the bank.
And as the material points out, these scalable campaigns often run multiple creatives at the same time. Exploring different angles, testing different user experiences. Along with those engagement-focused posts that further educate the algorithm.
That are training the algorithm, yeah.
Exactly.
And this really highlights the power of engagement, right?
It's huge.
The material argues that exponential scale is what happens when your advertising goes from being just a bunch of random ads to more like an organic growth engine, where your engagement efforts and your conversion campaigns are all working together.
It's a beautiful thing.
And when an ad gets a lot of engagement, it tells the algorithm that this is valuable content.
It's a clear sign.
So the platform is more likely to show it to more people.
Yeah, give it more reach.
Which can even lead to lower costs for your future campaigns.
The AI is getting smarter and smarter.
And this leads to what they call the exponential effect.
I love that term.
Where every campaign you run actually improves the performance of your next campaign.
It's a self-sustaining cycle.
Right.
It's not starting from scratch every time.
And the material really emphasizes this point about engagement metrics, it says. That ignoring them is a critical mistake.
It's a big one.
These aren't just vanity metrics.
No, not at
They
all.
have a real impact
They can make or break your campaigns.
on your advertising costs and your overall success.
Platforms love content that people interact with. It means those ads are more likely to be shown,
Right.
and often at a lower cost.
So, a campaign that combines, engagement-driving content with those direct response ads is going to do way better
It's a 1-2 punch.
than a campaign that's just focused on, the hard sell.
It's about building that social proof,
Right.
reducing your future expenses,
Yeah.
and making your retargeting more effective.
And this is so interesting. Even people who don't buy,
Yeah,
they're still providing valuable data.
they are by engaging.
They're telling the AI something, and
Yeah.
that makes your future campaigns more efficient.
So it all comes back to this idea that scaling isn't just about spending more.
It's about strategy,
It's about working with the algorithm.
partnering with the AI.
So for someone listening who's, tired of this ad churn, wants to get to that exponential growth, what's the key shift they need to make?
The material really stresses moving away from those one-off campaigns
Yeah.
and towards building a strategy that creates momentum over time.
Yo.
And a key tactic here is running ads that are specifically designed for engagement.
Alongside your conversion ads.
So not just trying to sell all the time.
No. These engagement ads, they're about sparking conversation, getting people to share, interacting with your brand.
So you're building a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
With your product or service.
And then the material talks about this really clever tactic,
Okay.
which is to repurpose your top performing engagement posts as conversion ads.
Wow, interesting.
So you're taking all that social proof, all those interactions, and you're using it to boost your sales
Okay.
by utilizing that existing post ID.
Yeah.
You can leverage all those likes and comments and shares when you transform that content into a direct response ad.
It's like you're starting with a head start.
Exactly. The source material also talks about using VSL in-feed.
What's that?
It stands for video sales letters.
Okay.
And they appear directly in the user's newsfeed. And here, watch time is super important.
Okay.
It tells the AI that this is content that people are really paying attention to.
Okay.
So they're more likely to be potential buyers. And then there's retargeting. The material highlights that retargeting audiences who have already engaged with your content,
Okay.
not just people who visited your website or bought something before, can be a really cost-effective way to lower your overall costs. These are folks who have already shown some interest.
Right.
They're warmer leads.
Okay.
And what's even more powerful is that engaging with these audiences can really boost the performance of your lookalike audiences
Okay.
by giving the algorithm data about people who have actively interacted with your brand. You're giving it a much clearer picture of your ideal customer.
So it can target better.
Exactly.
The source material concludes by saying that ad churn is really a symptom of this short-sighted approach of treating advertising as just these, isolated attempts to make a sale instead of building this system that learns and grows over time.
Exactly.
It's about shifting our focus away from constantly searching for that next winning creative and towards building this self-sustaining ecosystem.
It's about playing the long game.
Right. That's fueled by every sale, every comment,
Every interaction.
every engagement.
And the material is very clear that having those clear positioning points, understanding your unique value proposition, and doing rigorous user experience testing are essential, by constantly testing different approaches and making sure that the customer journey is smooth. You're giving the algorithm even more data to work with.
Right.
So it can figure out what really resonates with your audience and ultimately drives conversions. The message is clear. Successful ads in a scaling strategy don't just make sales. They train the algorithm.
Okay.
And that allows you to escape that ad churn cycle.
This has been a really fascinating look at this material you sent on online advertising.
It's been great.
The key takeaway for me is the difference between just focusing on conversions and actually building for scale, and how important engagement is in achieving that exponential growth by working with these algorithms. So I encourage you listening, think about this. Are you just chasing conversions? Or are you actively using these engagement tactics to build a system that can grow beyond that ad churn? This deep dive definitely gives us a new perspective on how to evaluate our campaigns and plan for the future.
For sure.
So thank you for sending this in.
It's been my pleasure.
This is some really, really interesting and important stuff.
It really is.
And thanks for listening.